So this series has mostly been aimed at single people who've never been married before. But there are some other permutations that I'm just going to talk about and tie up in this final episode. And I've had some questions in particular about married couples and when masturbation is okay within marriage. So let's just get into that. First of all, I would say that the sexual impulse, remember, is always meant to lead to a relationship rather than isolation. So whatever brings you closer to your spouse, whatever strengthens your marriage is okay, but whatever drives you apart, whatever causes isolation from your spouse is not okay. That's basically the golden rule that we're working with here. So scenario number one, let's say a husband is in the army and he's deployed overseas for several months. He's going to be apart from his wife for several months, maybe even a year. These are obviously less than ideal circumstances. There's a geographical separation there that neither of them can do anything about. So in order to keep that bond with each other through that distance, is it okay that they then masturbate while thinking of each other, even while talking on the phone or texting with each other? I think probably yeah, because it's trying to maintain the bond and keep them close together in the only way that they can in those difficult circumstances. It is promoting union between them, even though they're far apart. Scenario number two, say one of the partners is incapacitated in some way. They've had an accident, they're injured, they're going to take a long time to recover, maybe they never will fully recover. Maybe there's a disability there now that makes sex impossible. Again, if the object of your desire is still your spouse, and if you can even still include each other in some way, if it's still promoting union and closeness between you, then it's making the best of the situation, and I would say that that is okay. Another question I've had is mutual masturbation acceptable as part of lovemaking within marriage? Again, I would say yeah. I would say that scenario is okay, because it's encouraging that bond of union, which is the golden rule. Marriage scenario number four. What if one of the marriage partners is actively withholding sex from the other in order to weaponize it? Whether that be for control, manipulation, spite, anger, revenge, can the innocent party then resort to masturbation? Well, this is very complex. Firstly, don't do this. The Bible says, do not deprive each other of sexual relations unless you both agree to refrain from sexual intimacy for a limited time. So don't do this. This is straight from the Bible. Whatever you're angry about, talk it over like an adult human being. Don't let the sun go down on your anger. Heal the rift and come back together as soon as possible. Similarly, if you're the one that is being deprived, then be mature about it too. Don't just respond by saying, well, fine. Who needs you? I don't need you anyway, I'll just go take care of it by myself. Let's all be mature about this. Apologize for whatever you did. Make reparations. Try to heal that rift. In marriage, it's always about what will bring you closer together. And if you respond to this behavior by simply saying, well, fine, I don't need you, I'll just go do it myself, then that will only drive a wedge between you, and we don't want that. But now then, if through no fault of your own, your partner withholds sex for months or even years, and you've done all that you can to try to get to the bottom of it, and you've tried to make things right, but they're still being unreasonable, there may be room for concessionary masturbation there to get you through that time. But this is just a really big issue. It's got so many permutations, I can't really cover it in this video. But just remember, the focus is on what brings you closer together. I was sent a story recently of a man who was waiting for his wife to go to bed in the evenings. He got into this habit of waiting for his wife to go to bed in the evenings, and then he would stay up late and masturbate, which meant that when he eventually did go to bed, he didn't have anything left to give to his wife. And you don't want that. You don't want masturbation to become this point of separation or isolation. It's only acceptable if it brings you closer together. I had an email just a few weeks ago from a married man who had struggled with PMO addiction in the past, and he'd been on a Sexaholics Anonymous course. So it's a bit like Alcoholics Anonymous, except it's for sex. And he sent me through the 12 steps that each candidate is meant to take on this course. And on one of the steps, it said that lust for your spouse was a bad thing, that you're not meant to look lustfully even at your wife or to be enamored with the body parts of your wife. Now, this is well-meaning for sexaholics, but it's not biblical. If you turn to the Song of Songs, you'll read about the lovers taking great delight in each other's bodies. They don't use the language that we would use. The man talks about the woman's breasts being like fawns, and she describes his legs as being like pillars of marble and like the cedars of Lebanon and things like that. But even though it's not language that we would use today, we can see that they're delighting in each other's bodies and they're enjoying each other's body parts. And that's okay. God made us to be sexually attractive to each other, and it would be a very strange thing if he was to do that, but then tell us that we could literally never act upon it or take any enjoyment from it whatsoever. I'm going to make you so sexually attractive to each other, but then I'm going to tell you that it's always sin and not let you enjoy it at all, ever? Wow. That isn't God. All God asks is that you express it within the safe context of marriage. That's all. For your safety and for the safety of others. But once you're in that marriage context though, enjoy each other. Don't feel guilty about it. Enjoy sex. In Proverbs 5:18 it says to rejoice in the wife of your youth. In fact, I read a great blog about this recently, about how enjoying your husband or wife sexually actually helps you towards purity. It reads, enjoying your wife sexually and inviting her to enjoy you is a God-installed sentry for guarding your heart in the fight for purity. Think of it as one of your first lines of defense. God says, because of the temptation to sexual immorality, I'm giving you protection. It's called your spouse. Rather than squandering your sexual desire in pornography and lust, fulfill it by having wonderful God-honoring sex with your wife. Love her sacrificially and enjoy her often. So the more you're fixated on your husband or wife, the more that you enjoy each other in that way, the more everyone else just kind of disappears. That temptation disappears. You don't even see those people anymore because your enjoyment is just so great in your spouse. And I think it is important that we know this stuff. I had another email recently from a man who, throughout his teenage years at church and through youth group, had just been hammered with this idea that sex is bad, sex is always something to be ashamed of, sex is always something to feel guilty about. That when he eventually got married, he found that he wasn't able to enjoy his wife. He actually felt guilty about looking at his wife in a sexual way. This idea had been so ingrained in him throughout church and through youth group that he felt bad about it, even when it was a spouse. And we don't want that to happen. Again, that teaching is coming from our own prudishness rather than from the Bible itself. The Bible's actually very open about telling husbands and wives to enjoy each other with God's blessing and to delight in each other within marriage. And if the Bible teaches that, then we shouldn't teach anything less. So, if you want to enjoy each other in that way, if you want to make masturbation a part of lovemaking, if it brings you closer together, it's okay. I get the feeling that people are asking this question because they're just so scared to put a foot wrong. But as long as you're married, it's okay to check each other out. It's okay to find each other sexually attractive. Can married couples watch porn together? Well, remember that porn is one of the red lines. It's one of the 5 absolutes. Therefore, the answer is an emphatic no. We cannot go near porn either as singles or as couples. We cannot play any part in propping up an exploitative and cruel industry. It only has negative outcomes both for viewers and for the performers. That one is a definite no. And then finally, I've had a question from a woman who says that she was once married, isn't married now, has no intention of ever marrying again, but she still has those needs. She's still young enough that she still has those needs. Sorry, I can't remember if you said if your husband had died or had left. But either way, I would say first of all, not to shut yourself off entirely from the possibility that someone else could still come along at some point, because that is, after all, still the ideal biblical solution to this. However, if that man was just the love of your life and he died and you just couldn't be with anyone else and nobody else could ever replace him, then I think you're probably in the same position as any other single is right now. Namely, you have to pursue a life of self-control, you have to make that your priority, you have to remember the 5 red lines, and only use masturbation very, very sparingly when things get difficult or dangerous. And with that, I'm done. And I'm glad to be done. I get to talk about something else again. I hope this series has been useful. I feel like I've really taken a risk with this series and put myself out there in a place that I really didn't want to go. I've had some sleepless nights about this series. I felt uncomfortable, I felt down at times. This has just been a real mental battle to get through this one. So I can only hope that it's all going to be worth it somehow. I just hope that it's going to do some good to someone out there somewhere and it will be worth the struggle. I shall have gathered, I don't fully have the answers to this topic, and that's what's been a part of the problem. But this series has just been my best effort at this particular moment in my life to help all of those people that have tried to email about this topic for answers. But that's it done anyway. I'll hopefully be back with another series very soon.